feel that you have.
But she would have patterns.
We're happy that we're putting a bit of sun inside, but we're very happy that you all come to this space. It's the first time actually the Hartig Art Foundation, together with the Holland Festival, that we're doing something public in the spaces we will have our future museum. Today's talk is from Ed Atkins and is on the occasion of Worm, which is in our former offices actually. We moved out of the space we had as offices because I think the spaces of the former restaurant are so beautiful, and the Worm, which Kasia Tots, who is sitting here on the Holland Festival, proposed to be shown here. It fitted just perfectly to our opinion meet on your career.
Totally, yeah.
So Ed and I just want to thank MD Atzing. It's been always a pleasure so far, and it will be even more in the future to collaborate with the Holland Festival and the Museum MD on co-presenting things. And this year we have Ed Atkins together, and also the Mary Vlog, which is end of June, that we're all very excited about. At Atkins,
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So the first show we did was 2014 in the Kursaliser. First larger survey of your work.
Yeah.
And then 2015 at the State Museum. I'm not sure if you have seen that show. 2014 we presented a work which is called Us That Talk Love from 2012. And I understand this is the first time I'd worked with an avatar. And I, so to say, have seen the avatar aging. And to every film that came after Us That Talk Love, you used another avatar figure. Updated. And I think it's very, very interesting to see how that figure changes, but also how you persistently and resist perfection of the figure in your work. What I was so excited about when I saw Ed's work first time is the intensity and also emotionality. He makes us aware of what conditions we are living in. And of course the digital is a very important element of the work, but that's not what really the work is about. It's about the human condition and the way we live in a world that changes and accelerates to change, and the emotions, our relations, our dramas, sex and love, the big themes of art as we know them. And that's not only the only thing you do. Ed writes not only poems, all the scripts you write, he even writes for theater. He does amazing drawings on Diel's Sebastian's voice. And I hope you get to see something and hear something of that on Sunday nights during your performance. I wanted to mention, because this evening Kasia wants to particularly talk about the performative aspect. From both shows, there was an iteration of performative. In the State Museum, it was capture performance, and I remember that great thing what you did for Zurich, where you basically performatively, digitally report an evening lecture. And I think I would love for people to see that again, but I think for now, let's talk about the work, your work in general, and maybe a bit about what we will encounter on Sunday.
Yes.
Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
And start.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, let's start from the war. Yes, I'm wondering how did you start to work on this particular project? And from that point, let's go to your practice at large. Was it a specific emotional impulse that triggered this project, or can you sense it?
It was part of a commission, actually, or at least it started as a commission, a sort of collaboration between Bell Labs and the New Museum. And there was a sort of an interest in failed communication. You know, there's a kind of corporatized language around this thing. Talking to Nokia, you know, I was kind of wildly uninterested in what they wanted to achieve, and I was much more interested in the texture of a kind of failed connection, or certain kinds of impossibility of being close enough to people that you love, or talking or something. And there was a whole load of projects that were possible in terms of, I wanted to talk with people who were in seclusion of all kinds. It was a big sort of project with lots of different people involved. And then, you know, there was the COVID thing, and everything was sort of laid to rest, really. A lot of the people that had signed up pulled out immediately, and, you know, so in a way, this piece was sort of an improvisation from the ruins of other projects, really. I still wanted to talk to someone that was not present, but that I would also be motion captured. I wanted to sort of combine various technologies of representation, or of intimacy, or of kind of texture and real sort of stuff. And in the end, I thought I should talk to my mum, really, because I live in a different country and don't really see her that often. And there's both an ease in going, okay, I'll talk to my mum, but also a kind of complexity about what that would be. And then, you know, it sort of rolled from there, really. But a lot of the kind of, you know, the beginnings of it were from many years of using this kind of technology, motion capture and this CG animation stuff, and sort of trying to always work out what is the kind of essence of what's very affecting about it, you know, beyond the kind of easy sort of uncanniness or something, but some other kind of aspect. And it became very important that I don't plan this at all, that I just ask my mum, I'm going to call you and I'm going to record it, you know, I hope that's okay. And then meanwhile, you know, going to a hotel room in Berlin, being covered in sensors and sort of having this thing, which has its own sort of frighteningly quick economy to it. You know, I had to sort of get everything in order quite quickly, and then just call her, and then capture the kind of reality of just asking her questions, talking to her. Because I had this feeling that in previous works there's always been little moments of kind of the failure of the tech, you know, the kind of or my forgetting to perform sufficiently or something for the tech, you know, in some way. And these kinds of lapses, these eruptions of some kind of real in it, were kind of the best part, I always thought. And so I kind of wanted this whole thing to be contained within a sort of, you know, it's a live thing, you know, and it's also a thing that doesn't necessarily merit being recorded, right? You know, outside of my own and my mother's conversation, what does it mean to kind of elevate this in such a way and spend a lot of money and a lot of time turning it into this fastidious animation? I like that perversity a lot, and I think it generates a certain kind of tension that I'm really into, you know. I could go on, but that's
But may I ask,
yeah.
how did your mother deal with the intimacy?
She does talk like this generally, but more about me or about her. I suppose I did want to. My only things that I had in my head that I hadn't told her was like I wanted to ask her about her life before me or apart from me, you know, in ways that are not necessarily things she would have shared with me. But I did have a feeling I wanted to talk to her about her mother, because you know, my grandmother had dementia for the last sort of 30 years of her life, you know, and my mother had looked after her so much. And also I know that they'd had this very close probably not great kind of codependent relationship, and the confusion of what a parent's for. And so I had this feeling of a certain kind of, I guess, mildly psychoanalytic terrain of a kind of heredity of certain kinds of trauma or experience or love. And but I also knew it was something that, you know, in a way, is stuff that is also about me and my mother and her, that she doesn't necessarily think about. And I suppose I wanted somehow a way to kind of have these different levels of the presence of a person through the telephone, but also through the motion capture and the animation, and then the completely absent her mother. So the whole thing has a sort of striation of generations that is both sort of shared and spoken of, but is unavailable as well. You know, it's sort of unspeakable in lots of ways, even though my mum does share a lot. And there's a lot of images that she shares that I didn't know anything about, you know. And I want it, so all of the kind of reactions in the thing are just real, you know. And that felt very important. None of it was scripted. I mean, it's been edited because I couldn't afford more animation time than 12 minutes exactly. So holding in this really strict economy to it as well. But I quite like that as well, you know, the kind of, here's your budget, and that's it can't go anymore, you know? Yeah.
And but would you say that you were rehearsing with her, or what was? I'm curious. How do you situate yourself in this dynamic, specifically in the work? Or are you a subject? Are you a character? Are you a personage? Are you an actor? Or like, yeah?
I think from this vantage point now, it feels like it's very, I think maybe it's all of those things, right? To be sort of cheap about it, like to be sort of a boring answer is like, yes, all of those things. But certainly each one has a very different, distinct kind of point of, you know, it took us, we talked for maybe half an hour before we recorded the whole thing, right? But it was only after a certain amount of time that we stopped being completely awkward and being completely incapable of speech. Because she knew that she was being recorded, and I, of course, was wearing this skin-tight lycra onesie and sort of sensors on my hands and this awful thing with like, so there's a point in the thing where I have to stop because I've got a headache because these super bright LEDs just on my face and a GoPro camera here. And then and my mum and an earpiece on the iPhone, you know, it's this.
So your body is
in
not in that position.
Yeah, but it's true that you do know what, like for example, I deliberately drank while doing it because I knew that the glass wouldn't be part of it, and I knew that it would do something interesting with the idea of the technology that promises to be as accurate as possible. I'm always wanting to sabotage that to a certain extent. Not in a really sort of heavy-handed way, but just the kind of inconsequential thing of just picking up a glass of water and drinking it, but the glass isn't there in the final video. So there's a part of me that's very aware of the tech, and you can't forget it, you know. And also, one of the myths of motion capture is that it goes straight from the captured performance through to the output, but there's so much cleaning up that needs to be done and perfecting of this thing. And what it is, I mean, you know, we had sort of 3 what's called witness cams around, so it's just video of what's happening. And I could, from that footage, draw up the storyboards to really select precisely what I wanted the camera to see at certain points, or where I wanted it to not look, or what I think. So while doing it, it was very weird because I'm talking to my mother, but there's also, in the next room of the hotel, there are 5 men monitoring everything. And that's really weird. And there's my mother talking about things that are really, really painful. I don't know. But I mean, there's no, you know, she was very happy and she was very proud of the piece and everything like that. So there's no disjunct there. Although I think, obviously, maybe for a long time being very interested in sort of uncomfortably intimate situation as well. Doesn't really answer your question, but
For instance, what was the difference in the process of working on the worm and you as an avatar and with other works where other avatars are present but they're not you? So how do you then construct?
But they're never a character anyway. They don't exist as a person with a name and backstory, you know. So they are always me. They're often me in a very sort of reptilian brain way, of just like, you know, like being overly physical or overly, you know, a bit like how you might perform for yourself in front of a mirror. It has this sort of narcissistic moment to it, but also a kind of excessive thing. Yeah, like caricature. And it also involves a lot of self-loathing and a lot of like disgust at one's own, the documenting forensically of your own being in some way. So this is different though, because there's my mum on the phone, but she's on the phone, which is a long way away, you know. But also I don't really like talking to her on the phone often, you know, or I don't really like talking on the phone. I find it perversely, considering how low res a phone call is or how much is missing in terms of information. It's often too much, I find, like emotion. If I'm not at home with my children or something, it's a kind of fun and real wrenched to just hear their voice. It feels almost like they're dead, you know? It has this really weird, haunted thing. But also a sort of, like outside of that, then there's also some superimposed essay of a kind of a history of technologies of communication or something, which, you know, finds the moment in the pandemic in some way, I suppose.
I find it very interesting that you choose this theme. In the pandemic, I think we all went through that kind of strange distance, but also intuitive in communicating.
Yeah.
But also being exposed.
Yeah.
I think that was a time so much personal information about ourselves has never been given out freely and without any comment before.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask something else. You know, it sounds to me it was that avatar we spoke about, the deep fake the film I just saw. And of course, when you see all of your work, you see it because it's your movement, it's your translated movement. Can you talk a bit about this distance that you create with that? And I mean, you could also easily just go deep fake now.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things there. I think one is it's always been weirdly important, and this is just a felt thing, is that I don't do anything to my voice. The voice remains as an unchallenged space somehow. But I also, I've never wanted the representation to be that good, or to be really good, to be sort of, you know, pretty great, but also kind of very conspicuously, undeniably artificial. So it doesn't ever sort of slip into, it's a person. It's definitely not a person. But what's happening beneath it is very definitely a body in some way. So that always drawing attention to that gap by, you know, like they're always just off the shelf models. They're not like custom. I mean, they're customized by me, you know, on their JPEG skin or whatever. But they're not like built for me in some special way. So they have this very generic sort of aspect to them, which again has a sort of weird, at least for me, a kind of peculiar relationship to the specificity of what I'm wanting him to do, or how I want to inhabit them, and yet they also have this kind of like, genericness in some way. So it's always been this frisson, this feeling of, I really never want the feeling of a very formal kind of artifice that's constructed, and then beneath that is this kind of churn of realism in some way. And I think the reason to know, I mean, this is the most sort of unfucked with performance in a way. You know, the whole thing is there's not many effects thrown at it, I suppose, but it still feels like by doing it like this rather than just filming me talking to my mother on the phone, some sort of gap opens up that really is kind of effectively very. It works a lot, you know, and it exposes something that would otherwise be unavailable to feel or to see, you know. Yes.
I'd like to ask about the notion of gaze or the act of looking, which I find very special and striking in your work when I see the worm. And the question is a camera or who or what is inspecting the whole room, the whole situation, zooming in and out. Sometimes the image is blurred. It feels like somebody or something is crying or experiencing a sort of affect that is very uncanny. So I can identify with it, but not fully. So how do you direct actually?
I think to stick with the worm, I think I did start to think about it as making a documentary. The one that was, you know, had this massive lump of fake on top of it, in a way. And so I wanted the handheld camera look for quite a lot of time, which is literally just actually tracking me holding a camera in front of a grid and then using the positions of that for the camera in the thing. So it really is another kind of performance capture, but the performance of a camera person doing this. And I suppose I wanted it to have the urgency that a lot of TV uses this as well, like the handheld thing that lends a kind of, whoa, this is sort of real or live or something. It's a kind of trope in a way. And there are a lot of them in there. There's a lot of lens flares, all of these things that are still kind of pushing towards overly faking analog stuff, you know, to kind of push closer and fail harder at being the right sort of reality or something. But yes, and also accident. You know, accident feels like falling out of focus or zooming in on the wrong bit of the head or something, or cutting at the wrong point or the right point. Am I ringing out in a weird way? Just that. I think it's a kind of it also embodies the camera in a way, right? If you give it to be a handheld thing, it's closer to there was a person there filming it. Even if the fact is that it's a sightless technology. So I have reference material that is a video of things, but there's no visual data that goes into creating this. It's all, it's data from sensors on my body and what is it called? Facial mapping kind of stuff. So it's peculiar to have this kind of excessively visual output that is very lens-based, as much as like the lens flares and the dust, smoke, but is also none of those things, I suppose. So for me, there's still a kind of poignancy about the absence of all of this stuff being very sort of super present in certain ways, but is also kind of desperately out there, not real. But then I think, and the thing that is real, at least the desire is to create this holistic work, right? So that the things that are being talked about, which really center around loss and the kind of failure to communicate something when you should have, or whatever, or failure to communicate, is also being sort of allegorized by the use of the tech and the use of the images in some way, but in a very close way.
And does it have, for you, like, when I watched The Worm a few times in a row, I started noticing things that I didn't see before. So I was in a sort of loop, and I thought, maybe it's a little like hallucination or a little alteration in the image. So, and then I thought, yeah, it speaks to me as a sort of, you know, message that what I see is very conditioned by my frameworks of references, or how do I want to understand the work. So there's this kind of critical, I think, potential in the act of looking and accepting that what you see alters and is changed by conditions.
Yes.
Is it something important for you, this kind of revelation or this kind of feedback that people could have?
I think so. I was just thinking, as an aside to what you were saying, I was thinking about the fact that, majority of reference points for this kind of aesthetic, I suppose, are almost exclusively cultural, or they're exclusively authored in some way, like bits of cinema or a whole, I don't know, like the universe of things that are kind of immediate citation for the visuals is really, it's like wildly artificial, sort of wildly, there's a point of kind of relying on people's fluency of how to watch things. But then I think, at least in terms of noticing new things, I think that, I don't know, it's a really simple piece in one way, but to me it feels an incredibly dense thing. So I hope that there is this kind of feeling that actually after a certain kind of the immediacy potentially of, I don't know, my mother talking about her mother throwing down eggs in a outside of a house or whatever, the kind of emotional kind of whack of the thing. It's also the possibility of kind of recognizing the kind of ubiquity of this aesthetic elsewhere. I don't know. I don't quite know why certain things rise. I think there's a very maybe kind of modest sort of a belief in the remainder, in this kind of the thing that's not seen, or something, or the thing that is not got, or the information that's absent, or this thing. And there's a faith that you could watch it 1,000 times, and there's a universe of things that are not available, both from my mother and her dead mother, and my feelings. I don't talk that much. There's a couple of moments of nearly bristling with argument a little bit about, or I'm trying to convey to my mother that she maybe brought me up with an idea that the truth and reality is miserable, that misery is true, because that's how she feels. And I think, so then I want the work also to be reflexive. I want it to speak of itself in a way. So maybe repeated readings or viewings or something, some of those things. Or like just her calling that feeling the world, that she coins this, or rather it's a kind of, what she calls it in her head is a kind of depression, really.
It's actually that you're not saying a lot. So I wonder how that decision came about. That basically the setup is like this, You're basically having the moderator. It's the moderator setup.
Yeah.
Then we expect you to talk.
Yeah.
Or present some.
But it'd be weird if I started, or you started going, the fact that I keep talking to, and I keep saying, "Oh, sorry, Mum," or "Oh, Mum, I'm sorry," like this. It's like a weird break with, it's a sort of, it's sort of framed in a way as a sort of TV interview in Britain in the 90s or something, and so there's something immediately perverse about the kind of, oh gosh, this is this relation. I mean, it should probably happen more on TV. I don't know, but what was the question? Sorry.
No, I thought it's an interesting decision you made, because that's how I thought. Yeah, he's actually taking the whole, everything that could be embarrassing about
right.
making this public. You're taking it just by sitting there. and not responding
Yeah.
to it, or making some smart
Yeah.
plans, or doing them. Yeah.
Well,
I think it's a very vulnerable place, you know.
I think I also wanted to see what happens to watch someone listening as well. You know, like I think, and listening live to new information that is very close to their life. And obviously, you know, that has the sort of relation to the tech not really doing a great job at my face or whatever. But also, I did want to. And there's another thing, is I think that my father and his death has fed a lot of my work for a long time, and I wanted to talk to my mum, you know, and there was a bit of that. I don't know. It's kind of confusing between like deliberate art making choices and then also like in the moment. I am talking to my mum who's alone with her dog in a house in the middle of nowhere. You know, it's very
To lockdown.
yeah, exactly, and sort of so everything also a bit, you know, circumstance and performative stress makes everything extra emotional, I think. You know, so there's a kind of this it's very weird, but it was a very conspicuous choice. It's like I think that it's not. I mean, it's peculiar because it's looking at the listener, which is me, the person who it's of, and whose voice is dominant, is not there, but is also doubly not there. They're not here either. They weren't there when they weren't here, or, you know. So there's this sort of stacking up of absence that I feel like I cruise into a scene that I didn't quite know what I was getting into, you know.
Well, it's very interesting. We had, we all have been in that situation,
Yeah,
right? But
of course.
we were Zooming all the time, right? Looking at someone, listening. But there's a very interesting experience we had, for example, with a commission we just put together in that time during lockdown. And I knew them all physically present.
Yeah.
But they didn't know one another.
Yeah.
And they could not speak.
Right.
They would not be able to interpret the other person.
Yeah.
And only after they met in person, the talks went well.
Yeah.
It was very, very interesting to see that. And I think in a way, enlarging that immensely by having such a close eye on every single, non-verbal activity.
Yes.
Basically enlarging.
Yes, exactly.
Looking at it.
Well, yeah, exactly. The performance of listening now, which is quite familiar from Zoom meetings and things, and then the kind of the outside of the frame. I mean, in this situation, outside of the frame is everything, you know, because nothing that's visible was there, except for, you know, like gestures and expressions and voice. So everything, you know, like there's a photo of me in the hotel room. It's you know, it's sort of, it's conspicuously ugly, and I feel disgusting in this. It's, you know, it's August, so it's sweaty, and I'm in Lycra. And the whole thing has this sort of really uncomfortable thing, but it seemed weirdly opposite from talking to my mum. I think it was a kind of weirdly like, okay, you know, this, and then she hadn't been talking to many people really either. But yeah, I don't know. I think the it's hard to say that I want so much discomfort, but I really do, and but I want that discomfort to be the expense in a way of a lot of the promises of the possible representation in this way. So there is at the bottom is a kind of like, this could be the most high fidelity and everything, it would never still, of course it could never do the thing, and you know, and part of the performance on Sunday is about that in some way, or is at least pushing a certain kind of incessant insufficiency.
Well, all one mission
Yeah.
to the first thing, what we have done with Mel, if the lockdown wouldn't have happened. I mean, are people aware of what that project was like? One of the most exciting projects in the 60s, where on art and electronic, like it was called EAT.
Yeah, electronic art. Something. Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, the historic thing is a huge thing, and they were trying to start it again in New York, and I was to be the inaugural person to do something with them. But you know, I think actually, despite, even if the pandemic thing, I think that what tech wants now, or what it wants from art, or what artists want to sort of provide. We were talking a bit about this sort of TED talkification of everything, and this sort of an artist has creative brilliance or some bullshit, you know, that's like, I don't know, it felt like that's what they wanted, and all I could talk about was like, yeah, but it doesn't work, and everything's shit, and you know, like all you want is to be with someone, and you know, you invariably met with a lot of sort of blank faces and people who hate it, you know. So I think even before the lockdown happened, and I was in Antwerp at their European headquarters when it first sort of started, and I was like, well, but I was already sort of days deep into trying to get them to understand what I was talking about, and I didn't know what they were talking about. So I think even if I mean, the original proposal was to talk to lots of different people and interview them, go to them, and capture them in some way, you know. I mean, it really hadn't got to that point. Also, I'm very late with these things anyway, but it hadn't really got to that point yet. And I think it was, for me, it was a bit of a bonus to get out of having to directly work with them, their technologies, you know, because they're developing their own kinds of motion capture things, but it's about like how isn't it wonderful? You can talk to your grandmother in the same, you know, on a little hologram or some shit. It's really sort of peddling an idea of telecommunication as what we're going to all find as the answer. And it's just as good as being with some of that stuff. And I suppose there's this kind of notion of the tech's, you know, like fundamental inability to do things is always the interesting bit for me. Yeah.
We still have 9 minutes. Maybe there are questions from the side. Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'm from the music world as well. I watched the show, the presentation, and I was wondering. I noticed that your mother is talking. You sit there and you. Oh, good. Yeah. You sit there and you reconstruct whatever you want to show, but then you added also music because you hear all kinds of instruments, sounds. Did you add that on purpose, and what was the reason why you added it? What is it? And because, because my impression is it's an alternative kind of opera, more or less. An alternative way of making an opera. You combine opera, an opera.
Yeah.
Opera. But what do you think about that?
It was definitely on purpose, very on purpose, but it's sort of, it's a hard one because it's not consistent with a conceptual rigor. It's not like a kind of, that had to be there, or like a sort of consequence of practicality. It was a desire to have the faintest kind of cueing of certain emotional situation, but also one of ambience, you know, of another off-screen. So the way that a lot of the music thing, it's just to kind of zoom like in a room with me at the piano and sort of straining with my voice quite a lot, you know. So it doesn't have an aboutness that I can talk about easily, don't think. Except that, you know, me and my mother both shared playing the piano a lot. You know, it's sort of a big part of our unspoken relationship.
Could it be part of the non-verbal communication?
Totally. Thank you. Exactly. It's part of a non-verbal communication. It's going on between me and my mum. But that's totally true. That is totally true.
No, it's like when you spoke about attention overlooked. So like when you listen, sometimes you listen to something, it's more, or they do something, they pop up, or they get bigger, or the word gets strange. So,
it's also, you know, like a kind of the unspoken thing being another way to signpost, you know, a lot of history and a lot of things that don't need speaking or that should be spoken about but actually remain unspoken or something. So it's kind of a pleading bits of music, it's quite sort of quietly desperate. I mean, yeah, but you feel the music is the hard thing to talk about, but it's easy to I think it's that kind of emotional register is what I want as well. Yeah, I don't think it's sort of telling you things, but I think it's sort of supporting.
It's making
you
stronger. Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a great idea to make an opera.
Well, you say that. No, I'm writing the libretto for an opera now, but I don't think I'm doing more than that yet. Try to win the other bits.
But still, you made a theater show last year, so you are reaching out to territory, theater and performance.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't really like it much. I think which is usually a good sort of start. And I don't beyond the promise of theatre is always like all I ever want. Really, like in a lot of the videos, I think are probably operationally closer to what I imagine theatre to be than cinema in some way. Just because of the kind of the tension of a body, and either absent, present, whatever, and also one of a kind of liveness or something. So it was an invitation from a theatre in Copenhagen to write and direct and produce a thing, and I immediately wanted to work with someone to do that because it's just too much. So I had an amazing poet that also lives in Copenhagen, Steve Zoltansky. We worked on this thing, and we had a lot of similar spaces of interest in relation to. I think we've both of our kind of practices have been moving in similar trajectories away from a kind of, excessive, sort of demonstrative, very effect-heavy kind of, like as a poet, I think he was much more stylish at certain points, or had, it was formal or purple or whatever. Whereas I think we both sort of rubbing it down to this sort of point of kind of, what if we just recorded people? What if we just did what if documentary or documenting people or talking to people or, live things was kind of it, really. But so the play that we ended up writing, putting on, all of the dialogue was made up of just recorded conversations between me and Steve and a few friends and stuff. And it's a really conspicuously psychologically bereft kind of play. There's not really drama in it, there's not really backstory, there's not really character, really. It's a lot of sort of interplay and relation and things on a very small scale at a certain point, and then it becomes something else. But yeah, it was wonderful to do, and I would totally do it again. But I think it was just a whole other thing, the kind of, you spend so many years sort of simulating aliveness, I think, and imagining what that is, but that's only ever through tension with something that is permanent, like a video that's done, it's edited and finished, and then choosing to make wrong-headed decisions or something. It was wonderful, and we filmed it, and we're doing more things together. We're doing another play and feature film, hopefully, because I think we found some space of non-performance, particularly in directing acting, but also in unhappening, not happening things, but also it's also sort of desire for like extreme virtuosity of a kind of magic or something, and then absolute amateurist sort of nothing. But somewhere oscillating between the two of those things felt. It doesn't feel that far from this somehow, because I think there's that confusion of document and performance and artifice and realism, different kinds of realism. And the play was very much, again, like part of the inheritance from my own mother is reality, like the misery and horror are truer than joy or pleasure or happiness in some way. That there is an inevitability to that, it's to do with death, of course, but is also, I think I always sat with this notion that the nicer my experiences were, the heavier the punishment would be cosmically. Which is stupid, but I think I got it from my mum. She got it from her mum, whatever. But I think we wanted to write this play where not really anything happens. Not in a Seinfeldy way, but a kind of, I don't know, in a way that there's a lot happening. It's just that the kind of dramatic, conversation piece, kind of water cooler, whatever the fuck. People hanging out and talking and doing kind of odd things. That felt really sufficient and really important. And I think a lot of just to go back to the music, a lot of my love is reserved for listening to music, and a lot of kind of stuff that's on the edge of music, novel music and kind of new music and modern composition, things that are kind of root tone and chair squeaking, music concrète, and all of these things that are really like reporting the world through technology that affords a kind of attention, but not necessarily about the importance of the thing that's happening, but the importance of the attention that's being paid to it. Yeah, that's sounding right.
Right. It was slowly round up. If there are other questions.
One more question.
All right. Okay.
You said your work, the avatars that are in the work is you in a way, right? Like that chart was. It's part of your character that's coming.
Well, there's no character.
No, not character, but
It's my body in them.
yeah. But when you went to this work, that's your mom. Is the
Yeah.
question was that she is part of you, and it's still like an open question if it is, but there is no it's just her.
No,
voice.
I mean, she's not part of the model.
Yeah, but she's.
She's in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if it was part of the question, because
No, it's
just
interesting.
mirror and about because I'm sometimes looking at my mom and I'm like, is it me or not? And trying to find some things, and then I'm doing something and I'm like, I think it's a reference of something that I got from my childhood, and then to do this kind of intimate, it's
Yeah.
kind of bring this as to your archive basically, and even like for your future question, maybe that's kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't like thinking about how similar I am to my mum in some ways.
Yeah, maybe it's like a future.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the horror of speaking about this work is that it's really on the line of I don't want to talk about this anymore. But only because I don't know either. It's it's the never-ending sort of. I guess it will end one day, but the kind of what one inherits, what kind of what makes you in some way. And I think that the kind of, the impossibility of an outside to look at something like that, there is a certain part of just the pull towards an outside that this sort of bad technology affords in some way, for me. And that might be really selfish, thinking about these things. But I tend to also think of things not as a positive construction, but as a kind of negative movement, like what's being taken away, and away, and away, and what are you left with sometimes. But it might be the same thing as a kind of resemblance, or an understanding, or an empathy that's possible that I can finally see when my mother talks about her mother. I'm like, actually, you're like your own mother, and I'm sorry you went through that, or whatever. So there is a reparative aspect to it that's really just for me, or it models. It models something that is otherwise intangible, maybe. You just give it form, and then you can turn it around in your hand and go, oh, this is maybe what it is. I don't know. Yeah, thank you, Mel.
Like the bloody avatar.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should round up this more official part of the conversation. We continue with drinks and some snacks. And just to say that on Sunday at 9 o'clock in the evening in Frascati 1, there is a performance, Epitaph, by Ed. Would you like to say something about this?
I'm gonna. I only have one performance thing that I've ever done, and to sort of do it again. But it's it's the trying to recite a poem well, or enough, or something. Yeah. Sounds really bad. But I mean, it's not that bad. There's more to it than that. I think there's a sort of, I mean, at this point, I don't know, there's a sort of, there's things that happen. Well, also just the faith that things happen, you know, like things will, I'll just try and do something for a while and then something might happen, you know. It's exactly it. But I think that, again, part of the improvisation and the kind of like, you just promise to go on stage and do this thing, and then, which is the best bit, right? It's the most horrible bit as well. It's like, just go on stage and start, and everyone looks at you like they're expecting something.
So yes, thank you very much for your attention and presence.
Yeah.